Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash.
Yeah. Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
And welcome, everybody, to the Libertarian Podcast Review. We've got the most disruptive journalist out there, the Death of Journalism podcast. With benefit of hindsight, we've got the one and only, the famous John Ziegler. John, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me, although I think your standard of fame is pretty low, but okay.
Exactly. You don't have to bash me quite. You'll get plenty of chances to do so as we go forward. Look, I had you on before. I thought it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed the fact you came on. I found out the same day you went on the Tom Woods podcast. So I don't know what that says. I'm just saying, I heard you later on there and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I sniped you on the same day. How have things been going the last 3 or 4 months for you?
Personally?
Sure.
Awful, terrible,
why?
Horrendous. I could do 3 or 4 hours on why, but I don't think it's probably appropriate for this podcast. But my family is healthy and safe, so I guess that's the bright side. Everything else is pretty much crap, but I'm still here. So
okay. Well, we're hoping the best for you. Golf game. Well, the last personal question: how's the golf game going, though?
I'm hitting it pretty good. Played my first tournament round this year, the Southern California Mid-Amateur Qualifier, which I missed by basically a shot. I shot 2 over par. And with a double bogey on a par 5, so that pretty much did me in. But for a 56-year-old guy, it's not too bad, and I'll be playing a lot of senior amateur events this year, hopefully.
Well, good to hear. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because while we don't do a sports necessarily on here, I think it's important. You and I talked before about Live Golf and the PGA Tour. This weekend was just the Masters tournament. So I thought we would talk to you. I'm like, we're going to tap into John here on some of these things. We're going to talk to you about, I want to get your take on the Masters, some of the stuff with the Live, because there was some little overlap and you had great insights. I don't always agree with you, but I love all your takes on Twitter. You're a must follow. Sigmund Freud out there. What is it? Sigmund Freud. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So let's start off with Masters. Why is it important, or do you think it is, for everyone to like follow along with the Masters? Because I think it's like the start of spring. It's great. It's just a fantastic event. So the Masters happens this weekend. Is it important that America follows along with this?
Well, I mean, it's the best golf tournament that there is. I actually have a lot of problems with Augusta National. The only time I ever covered the event, I was there all week in 1992, and I was physically escorted off the grounds because I had the wrong credential. That's how incredibly strict they are. I actually have a much bigger problem with Augusta National for how they handled COVID. I actually believe that Augusta National had the ability to get my child back into school, and did not take it. And I mean,
explain what you mean by that. I totally understand, but explain what you mean by that.
That sounds crazy, but I believe it with all my heart. So it's April 2020, and the whole world is shut down. And golf at first was going to keep playing because there was some rationality still being used, where we go, well, wait a minute, hold on. This is an outdoor sport with inherent social distancing. And all of our players are young, and they all, by the way, have excess vitamin D, off the charts because they're outside 6 hours a day. And, this sounds like a pretty safe situation for us, and we're going to be the only game in town. Well, after about 12 hours of political pressure from the rest of the sports shutting down, golf shut down, which was, I think, a catastrophically bad decision. But however, Augusta National was in a unique position. They are the only entity that had the power and the influence to continue on. And if they had done so, the players would have gone along, CBS would have gone along, the PGA Tour would have, no, everyone would have been terrified of them. And if they had said, look, if they had had the balls that their predecessors had when they took on the feminist Nazis and said, go pound sand, we'll let a woman into our club when we want to. I mean, this is a club that 15 years ago or whatever it was decided not to have commercials for their tournament because they wanted to tell the feminist Nazis to go pound sand. If those guys had still been in charge in 2020, here's what they would have said, in my very strong opinion. Well, this is interesting what you all are doing. We don't quite understand it. We're going to have our tournament in April because we have our tournament in April every goddamn year as God intended. And if you want to show up, great. If you don't, that's your choice. More power to you. We're going to have our little tournament and see what happens. And had that occurred, and if it had happened, nothing bad would have happened. We know that. We knew that then. Anybody with any rational brain knew that then. But had that occurred, it would have given, first of all, the entire golf world, if not much of the sports world, the courage to go, well, wait a minute. If they can do the Masters, then why can't we do outdoor baseball? And if we can do outdoor baseball, then, why can't we do outdoor football normally in the fall? And if we can do sports normally, then why the hell are we not going to school? Because that would have been the natural progression of thought. And I've always believed you can't have, during the COVID situation, you can't have regular school when you're not doing regular sports. Yep. And Augusta National was in a unique position to put a stop to the insanity. And instead, they exacerbated it. They canceled their tournament. They moved it to November with no crowd, even in November. By the way, Georgia had opened up as a state at that point.
Right.
Brian Kemp had opened the state of Georgia up, and they still, even in November of 2020, had no crowds. And even the people that were there were masked. And then in April of 2021, still limited crowds and all masked. So I have a big philosophical problem with Augusta National. However, I'm the most objective person on the planet. They run an amazing golf tournament. It's the best golf tournament in the world. And if you're a golf fan, you're pretty much out to watch. And by the way, that's partially why Augusta National knows they can do whatever they want. They can crap in the face of the hardcore fan because the hardcore fan is always going to support the Masters no matter what because it is what it is. So to say the least, I'm very conflicted about Augusta National and the Masters. But as a tournament, you can't beat it.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, do you know when Hootie Johnson did pass away? Because I believe he's dead. He's the former chair of the Masters or the club there, and did push back against a lot of these things that you're exactly what you're saying. Did he pass before the whole COVID endemic? Do you know, or pandemic?
I'm pretty sure Hootie was gone. I mean, I know he wasn't the chairman. Fred Ridley was the chairman, and Fred Ridley had just taken over for a guy whose name is escaping me at the moment, who I don't believe would have caved to the COVID insanity. He was a football player at Georgia and actually had at least a testicle or two. But Fred Ridley is of the younger generation of Augusta National members. And while he was a very good amateur golfer, and I respect that, he is way, way, way more PC and much more concerned about the image of the club and how it relates to younger demographics. And then, by the way, I'm sure he's very popular there because the tournament is doing exceedingly well, and it's never been more influential. And I'm sure they make tons of money on it every year, even though that's not really their goal. But Fred Ridley has made some, I believe, very bad decisions in the realm of rulings over the years. He was the rulings chairman before he was the chairman of the club, and I believe that he should have disqualified Tiger Woods. I think it was back in 2013 when Tiger clearly signed an incorrect scorecard, and they concocted some way to keep him in the tournament because obviously he's Tiger Woods and he was in contention that year. And I thought that was a seminal moment because, golf was supposed to be the sport that the rules really mattered and everyone got treated the same. And that was, I think, a real eye-opening moment for me, at least. That, okay, so even Augusta National is going to treat Tiger Woods differently because he's Tiger Woods. And by the way, I think we saw that happen in this particular tournament when Brooks Koepka committed a clear violation that the Augusta National lords were afraid to punish him for, I believe, a variety of different reasons.
Well, okay. First of all, great analysis there. I do follow professional cycling a lot. In the same time period, they did keep racing. They did cancel a race exactly. That's always the day of the Masters. Paris-Roubaix. It was yesterday, but same thing 2 years ago. They did push that back as well, but they kept racing, and I think that did help. Even though people were calling for the death of millions again happened from riding your bike outside, dumbest thing ever. However, I think the Masters has, and what cracks me up with this is there's always a comparison. You have this big bike race, guy wins, he maybe gets 120,000, and then you do a comparison of what you get for the Masters. The Masters has so much power, and you are exactly right. With that said, what did Brooks Koepka do that violated the rules? And what was Tiger Woods? Was it an intentional miss? And I think it's strict liability with your scorecard, right? It doesn't matter if you intended to do it wrong and right. It's supposed to be at least.
Okay. Well, the Tiger Woods situation is they're both a little bit complex, but if you want me to get into them, I'm happy to do so.
Briefly. And then
I think this was 2013. I could be wrong on the year, but so Tiger was playing, ironically, the very same hole Brooks Koepka was playing when he had his situation happen this week. And he hit his third shot, and it hit the pin, and the ball rolled back into the water, one of the worst breaks of all time, because it really could have been a tap-in birdie, and it turned into a catastrophe. Long story short, you have a multitude of options under that circumstance, one of which is to drop the ball exactly where you were. So Tiger appeared to do that, and he hit his next shot, and it was just a little bit farther past the pin, but this time it didn't hit the pin, and he finished the hole. I'm pretty sure he made double bogey 7. And then after the round, Tiger being Tiger, he bragged to a reporter who asked about the bad break. He said, yeah, I knew I had hit the first shot a little bit too hard. So what I did was I went back a couple of yards, took my drop, and hit the same shot over again, as if he could duplicate the exact same shot. He's magic. He's Tiger Woods. Well, anybody that knows the rules of golf knows that means he took a bad drop, because he's admitting he did not take the option available to him, which was to drop where the previous spot was. And if you looked at the divot was significantly behind where the previous shot was taken from. So that means that he signed an incorrect scorecard, and that means disqualification. And the Masters instead convoluted some sort of, I've never to this day understood exactly how they did it. And by the way, there's a fascinating backstory as to how Augusta found out about it, and I think that was partially what poisoned them against coming up with the real ruling, because the guy that called them was a USGA guy who Fred Ridley had a feud with, and I don't think they liked each other, and I think that jaundiced Fred Ridley's view of the subject when it came up later. Anyway, it's a long story, but they gave the wrong
And by the
ruling.
way, the PGA has a long history of people watching on television, calling in and reporting a violation, and then the PGA officials actually taking that and a review and making a thing. Now you can cross out of bounds and go, no further on that line and go back towards the tee type of thing. But that's not what happened here. So that's obviously a problem. So what about Brooks?
So Brooks Koepka on the same hole, 15th hole, hit his second shot onto the green. This was in the first round. Very good shot into a par 5. And the camera that was covering Brooks and his group caught Brooks Koepka's caddy looking directly at Gary Woodland's caddy, who was Brooks's playing partner and happens to be a good friend of Brooks's. And the caddy clearly, not once but twice, says or mouths the word five to Gary Woodland's caddy. Now, the video makes it very clear that Brooks Koepka hit a 5-iron. So there's really no other logical explanation for the 5 other than that Brooks Koepka's caddy was telling Gary Woodland's caddy that Brooks had just hit a 5-iron. Gary Woodland, who was up about 20, 25 yards, was still to hit his second shot into the same green. Now, I didn't even notice it at first. I happened to be somewhat involved in this story because I was the first person to post the video analysis from the Golf Channel, and it went crazy viral, like 700,000 views of the video and well over 1.5 million impressions of the tweet over the course of the tournament. And what I didn't even notice at first was that Brooks Koepka himself, as he's taking off his glove, it's very clear as he's taking off his glove, he looks at Woodland's caddy and he goes like this with his hand as if to emphasize, yeah, it was 5. Now, of course, we all have 5 fingers, so there are people who say that doesn't mean anything. But I've seen other video of Brooks taking off his glove, and he doesn't spread his fingers out.
Now tell everyone why that's a problem.
Okay, now it's a problem because if that's what happened, and it certainly appears as if it did, that would be a violation of the rules because neither you nor your caddy are allowed to give or proactively receive any quote unquote advice. And what club you hit in a situation where you're both hitting to the same green is deemed to be advice. And, it's for a lot of people who are not golfers, they, first of all, can't understand why this rule exists. There's an important reason for why the rule exists, which is basically if you don't have it, you're going to have a situation where, first of all, you're going to slow down play, but also you're going to have a situation where friends are going to be constantly sharing information with each other, and people that aren't friends won't be. And that means that when friends like Brooks and Gary are sharing information, that means the rest of the field is disadvantaged. In other words, they're not getting the same advantage in relation to the field. And so it's to protect the rest of the players that are not in that group. So that's an important part of this. But the other part that people don't understand is, well, they're thinking, well, why would Brooks get a penalty for what his caddy did and giving advice potentially to Gary Woodland? And it's whether you give it or whether or not you ask for it, it's a penalty either way because, and there's logical thinking to this as well, if you think about it, and I believe this is what happened with Brooks Koepka and Gary Woodland. The only reason that Brooks Koepka and his caddy were giving Gary Woodland proactive information, seemingly without even being asked, although we don't know. It's possible that Woodland's caddy asked, but from the video, we can't tell that. But the only reason why they would be doing that is that they had some sort of probably unspoken reciprocal agreement that they were doing this for each other the entire day. And that it was just natural. Hey, what'd you hit? 5. And that's illegal. That is clearly a violation of the rules. That's a 2-shot penalty, but it was not given to Brooks Koepka. And the reason why it was not given to Brooks Koepka, I believe, is first of all, he was leading the tournament. And so that's a much bigger deal to give a 2-shot penalty to the guy leading the tournament than it would be if Brooks had shot, 2 over par and was not in contention. And then the other thing I believe played a role here is Brooks is part of the Live Golf League. And because he's part of Live, most people would think, well, Augusta National is anti-Live. He would be treated poorly by Augusta National. No, that's not the world we live in. Augusta National knows that if they ding Brooks Koepka, the leader, for 2 strokes, on a rule that is very, very rarely enforced because it's impossible to prove, basically, then there's going to be a massive amount of controversy from people that are upset that Augusta National is taking out a Live player. And by the way, I even think it would have been logical for Augusta National to be concerned that this could become part of the lawsuit that Live has against the PGA Tour as proof that the governing bodies have it out for the Live players. And so I think all of those things combined, plus, let's be clear, something very, very important happened. All of those involved in this, Koepka, his caddy, Woodland, and Woodland's caddy, denied it, which in my view was a lie, at least on the part of Koepka's caddy and Koepka. I mean, those two absolutely lied, in my very strong opinion.
Is there any chance, and they probably would have used this as an excuse, you hear the good old stories, the caddies back in the day, or like Faraday saying, oh, the caddy is always signaling to me what club the player's hitting. These are announcers on course. Probably isn't the case. There probably weren't announcers on course to take that kind of cue.
Well, no, actually, there was an SI reporter who I'd never heard of before who tweeted erroneously that they had found out that this was just told to an announcer and that it was no violation. That is not what Augusta National said. And let's be clear, and I think you know me well enough and my thinking well enough to know, I am a huge believer that what does not happen is often more important than what does happen. And had there been an announcer of any sort of media person, a spotter, anybody in the media, who had been the target of Koepka's caddy saying 5, the first thing that would have happened is that they would have rushed forward and said, whoa, that's not what happened. It was to me. It wasn't to Woodland. And nothing like that happened. Nothing. So Augusta National in their statement never said that. And the media would have been all over any TV person who would have been coming forward to say, no, you got this all wrong. And then, by the way, that's not what Koepka's caddy and Koepka said.
Right.
So they just went, no, nothing happened, in a way that was really kind of nonsensical to me. So that announcer story makes no sense. By the way, it also doesn't make sense because the announcers don't give a flying hell what the club is after the shot has been hit. Right. In most situations. So, and
I've heard the old school thing where a caddy is looking into someone else's bag to see what they're doing. Now, that's actually legal. That's legal.
Yeah. That is legal. It's risky. And by the way, look, I think I believe that most media members, especially sports media members, are morons who are incapable of independent and creative thought. But after Sunday's round, Koepka had a press conference, and he very casually mentioned, he had just played, 36 holes or over 2 days with John Rahm, the eventual winner. And he says to the media very casually, on number 12, I knew that John had hit 9 and I hit wedge. And I'm like, well, what? Okay, how about a follow-up question on that? Like, all right, so how did you know that John hit hit 9? And then he says, I believe I'm about a half club longer than John, when he was explaining his club selection. So that tells me a lot right there.
Which hole was that?
Number 12, the short par 3.
Well, now he could have overheard them conversing.
Hold on a second. I'm not suggesting that it was a violation of the rule. What I'm suggesting is that it is Brooks's MO to be very, very concerned with what his partner is hitting, and is also so concerned about it and so cognizant of it that he is aware that he doesn't hit the club longer or 3/4 of a club longer or hit it the same. He knows he hits it half a club longer than John Rahm. You don't find that out playing a couple of holes where by accident you happen to know what the guy is hitting. You only know that and have enough confidence to put it in play in the final round of the Masters when you really know. And there is only one way you can really know, and that's if this is his normal MO to find out what his playing partner is hitting at any possible moment. Because, by the way, you got to remember, Koepka doesn't even play in the PGA Tour anymore. So he and Rahm haven't played together in who the hell knows how long. And so, again, that didn't prove anything. But it does, I believe, go to the MO of Brooks Koepka in this situation.
No, that's an insightful thing that John brings to us. Okay. Well, now it wouldn't have mattered in a sense because he didn't win. He lost by 4 strokes, but he wouldn't have been tied then with Phil Mickelson. So this guy, John Rahm, wins. He's a Spanish guy. It's great. There's this, but so without analyzing the tournament, because people could go elsewhere for that. What were the big stories coming into the Masters, and what were the big stories coming out, and were any of them connecting? In other words, there's a big story that's coming out at the end, and was that something that anticipated going in? Does that make sense?
Well, the big story going in was how LIV would do in comparison with the PGA Tour players. And it's funny how perception is everything, right? I mean, had Brooks Koepka hung on and won, it would have been a catastrophe for the PGA Tour, because you would have had a winner from LIV. You would have had a second or third place finisher in Phil Mickelson from LIV. You would have had a fourth or fifth place finisher from LIV in Patrick Reed. Now, winning is everything. Just win, baby, as Al Davis used to say. And because Koepka faded on the fourth day, because they're not used to playing 4 days on the LIV Tour, and so I don't think it's a total coincidence that he faded after 3 days of stress and scrutiny. But he was a totally different guy on day number 4. I think that, look, I hate LIV, but I am the first to acknowledge that that's an impressive performance to have 3 top finishers, and almost a guy who could have won the tournament if he hadn't faded away in the last day. However, if you look at the bigger picture, only 4 out of 18 players from LIV finished in the top 25. So, if you had told someone, if you had said before the week, only 4 LIV players are going to finish in the top 25, and you didn't know where in the top 25 they finished, you would think that was a catastrophe for LIV, because that's terrible. But that's not the way the perception is going to go, and understandably so, because 3 of those 4 were right at the top. So I would say that LIV doing better than some like myself expected is a huge story. Obviously, John Rahm being the number 1 player in the world is a huge story. And then there's Tiger Woods, because I think we now know, and I'm somebody who used to be the biggest Tiger Woods fan in the world, and then after the scandal, I had a lot of anger towards him, and then when he made his comeback, I've now forgiven him, and I have a lot of affection and admiration for what he's done, especially after that horrific car accident. But I think we now know for sure that Tiger Woods is never going to win another Masters. I think we knew that already, but he's never going to win another Masters. He's very, very likely never going to win another golf tournament, period, because he's just not going to play enough. And I think that we're really now close to the end. I mean, I think we're down to single digits in the number of regular or major championship events in the under 50 crowd that Tiger's going to play. I think it's possible that if he's still playing and healthy enough that he plays the Champions Tour, because you can ride a cart there, and it'll be fun for him. I think that can happen. But as far as playing in major championships, it is such a grind for him just to even get his body prepared. And if it's not resulting in anything fulfilling for him, and nothing but pain and by the way, embarrassment at times, I just don't know how much longer he's going to do it. I think he'll do it for sure, assuming he's physically healthy enough, through next year. But I really think every time he tees it up now, we're talking about it could be the last time in that particular tournament.
Do you think that Phil Mickelson's, by the way, last day final round, spectacular, 1 bogey and then just a slew of birdies coming in, and I think he actually left some shots out there still. Was him being with LIV, you hate him, I understand that. Was the coverage of the LIV players okay, or was it what they should have happened?
Well, this is where I'm going to show my legendary objectivity, because even though I despise LIV and I hate what Phil has done, because I believe that Phil sold out to pay off gambling debts, and you gotta pay off the debts, man. I don't know. And he went on a concerted mission to destroy golf out of his own ego, and he lied about it all. And so I have big problems with Phil. However, first of all, what he did on the golf course is amazing. I mean, it's It's unbelievable. At 52 years old, almost 53, playing on a recreational tour that plays 3 rounds with no cut. And by the way, he has not been playing well on the Live Tour. I mean, so for him to come out of nowhere and shoot that final round, that's probably the best final round. Certainly for somebody of his age. I mean, you have to go back to Nicklaus in '86, probably.
I think they said that was his best final round at Augusta as well.
Right. And so, but the conditions were not that easy. And I will say that up until the very, very, very end, when CBS tried to make up for it, they basically treated, and I said this on Twitter, CBS and the golf media in general, up until the very end, treated Phil Mickelson kind of like they do stories of vaccine failure. I mean, we're just going to ignore it. It didn't happen. If we just ignore it long enough, it'll go away. Can you imagine? Let's flip this since we talked about Tiger. If Tiger Woods had been in, borderline contention the entire weekend and had shot a 65 to take the clubhouse lead under the same circumstances, we would never have missed one shot from Tiger Woods. And I would venture to guess 40% of the airtime would be devoted to Tiger Woods. But, Phil at one point was almost as popular among golf fans as Tiger Woods. And it's very clear that the golf media made a concerted effort to ignore Phil as much as they could until they couldn't do it any longer. And, look, you got to take your hat off to him. It was an amazing feat. I was stunned by it. I would have bet a lot of money that Phil would not have finished that tournament under par at the beginning of the week. And I would have. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was expecting, even when I was watching, I went on a bike ride, I was listening to Masters Radio, and he's playing with Jordan Spieth, and they keep talking about Spieth, and they're never mentioning him. And I finally looked, and I'm like, it was like, holes 4 through 12 or something like that. And he has a bunch of birdies in this time. And I'm like, they never mentioned him. So it was interesting. I actually did expect him to give a bunch back at the very end, just being Phil, but it was impressive. Okay. What is what's going to come out of this with our Live and the situation with the Masters? You got some more, the Open, obviously the PGA Tour tournament, and those are the two. What else do we have here?
The 2 Opens and the PGA Championship.
The two Opens. Yeah. Do the Live players get a chance to be in those? Is this a good thing, a bad thing? What took place here? It seemed, I don't know. What's your take on this? Then we'll move on to something else.
Well, the Live players will be able to play in the PGA Championship or in the Opens if they are otherwise exempt. Now, the U.S. Open has open qualifying, so even if they're not exempt, they would be allowed to go through open qualifying if they chose to do so. But that's a pretty arduous task. I mean, it's 36 holes at least in one day. That's assuming you're exempt through the first stage. I've never gotten through the first stage, and I've stopped trying. Live is going to be a big part of the storyline. I am hopeful that the blank check has been taken away from Greg Norman, because if there still is a blank check, I can guarantee you he's writing the number 300 million with John Rahm's name on it right now, because if John Rahm, who's a good friend of Phil Mickelson's, if they were able to somehow steal John Rahm, I think that would be devastating to the PGA Tour. I mean, then Liv would be able to boast the top 3 finishers at the Masters and the number 1 player in the world and the previous number 1 player in the world from last year. Until he went to Live and his ranking fell because he wasn't playing in points events. Cameron Smith, and I mean, so that would be a terrible. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but stranger things have happened. Now the MO, the conventional wisdom, not the MO. The conventional wisdom is that the Saudis have stopped writing blank checks and decided that this is actually a business venture. See, as a libertarian, I'd like to address this one issue, because I am a libertarian. And I get a lot of crap from fellow libertarians who don't understand why I hate Live. because they think that live is a free market. Like, isn't this great competition? A competition makes everybody better, and the players are getting what they're worth, and this is what the free market is dictating. And I say, no, whoa. No. This is the exact opposite of a free market. This is the most contrived market in the history of sports. This is a foreign adversary with an unlimited amount of funds, spending exorbitantly, not, let's be clear, not to buy up all the talent so that they think eventually they will make a profit. That is not what the Saudis are doing. This is not a profit-making venture. This is a kamikaze mission on an American institution. That's what this is. And whether or not they are continuing on that kamikaze mission, I don't know. There are reports that indicate that they may have decided to, as I said, to turn off the spigot of the free money. But up until this point, grotesquely overpaying for talent to try to destroy your competition on behalf of a regime that kills people, is not exactly a libertarian view of a free market. That is a contrived market, and it's amazing to me how many libertarians have fallen into this trap, into thinking that somehow, well, this is just, aren't you in favor of the free market? No. This is not a free market. This is the exact opposite of a free market. And, the players are benefiting because they're getting paid. They're getting way overpaid right now. I mean, not even just on live. Now the PGA Tour is forced to overpay just to keep up. And I don't think that's good for the game because, I believe that one of the core elements of golf is fear. And they've already taken away fear because of the technology of the game. I mean, the drivers are way, way too forgiving. The irons are way too precise. The golf courses are in immaculate condition. And, the ball goes so incredibly far. There's no fear on the golf course. But there used to be some fear off the golf course because,
right.
If I miss
top 125 get their card and
right.
the other ones don't get a job. And yeah.
Right. If you miss a cut, you get $0. Well, now, I don't know what the number would be, but it's probably top 50 players in the world are also ridiculously rich that, if they miss a cut, their punishment is getting into their private jet, going back to their palatial estate, and hanging out with their hot wife and their beautiful kids. That's not fear. There's no fear in that. Oh, great, I had the weekend off. Where do you want to go, honey? On our private jet. I mean, so, the more players that are able to do that, it's great for them, I guess, but it's terrible for the game. Terrible, because that was a huge part of the essence of what made professional golf interesting, and it's been taken away.
Yes, I heard your argument before. You've really pulled me in on this, especially the fact that the players themselves have a free market that they're playing in, but the actual leagues it's a different story. I think you're spot on with that. Let's move on to some things. I want to get your take. You put out a tweet. It was when Glenn Beck went on Tucker Carlson's. He's got looks like a homemade MAGA hat. And you did, let's see if I can find the tweet here. You said, Marty McFly visiting Glenn Beck in 2016. In 2023, you will be on Fox News, dramatically urging USA to rush to Trump's defense while wearing a MAGA hat. Beck, that's totally nuts. Why would I ever do that? McFly, Trump gets indicted for paying hush money to a porn star. So,
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
It's solid. Tell us what you mean by that. And I know you know Glenn Beck and you talked about that before, but I kind of want to get into this indictment thing where people are saying, maybe I'll play a clip for you here. It's Charlie Kirk just saying, oh no, it's a done deal. He's so in the bag now. What's your take on the indictment that's DeSantis and MAGA Glenn Beck here?
Well, there's a lot there. Look, I've been, I guess I call myself friendly with Glenn for a long time. He and I had a lot of conversations on and off the air in 2016, 2017 about this whole issue of Trump. For people who have forgotten, Glenn Beck, and other than myself, I'm not prominent. Glenn Beck obviously is. Glenn was by far the most prominent never Trump conservative that held out through the election Very few did. I did. And, he held out even a little bit into the Trump administration, but he realized it was not viable from a business standpoint. Just you couldn't do it. And I've always given Glenn a little bit of slack, actually a lot of slack, because he was at the time owning and running the Blaze, where he had a lot of employees that were counting on him. So it's not just him. Like if I'm only worried about, or I have to be concerned about my own livelihood, then I'm the only person being harmed by my decisions to make a principled stand, right? My wife, unfortunately, fits into this category, and I'm sure she would have liked for me to.
Wait, John, I got to push back here. We all know that you're not making a ton of money from your paternal stuff. Matter of fact, you might be describing your situation with Glenn Beck as similar, right? You've been vilified because of this.
I think you miss. I think you're missing my point. I probably didn't articulate it properly. I have made numerous decisions that have harmed me greatly from a financial standpoint. My wife, I'm sure, is not appreciative of that. But those are decisions that I made, and the number of people that were negatively impacted was limited. With regard to the Blaze,
Gotcha.
It was not limited. There was a lot of people, and so therefore I have given Glenn greater slack. And I have to say, Glenn and the Blaze did a hell of a job of getting back on the Trump train in a way to make themselves viable. But if you had told me, using the Marty McFly thing, obviously the Michael J. Fox character from Back to the Future, if you had told me in 2016 that Glenn Beck would be doing that in 2023, and that the reason was because Trump had been indicted for paying hush money to a porn star, I would have thought that was impossible, and on so many levels. But that's where we are. And look, there's no question that in the short run, the indictment has bizarrely helped Donald Trump in the Republican nominating process. The idea that it's over is ludicrous, and here's why we know it's ludicrous. Just today, Donald Trump was ripping into Ron DeSantis, urging him not to run. Why would Donald Trump do that if he was really all that confident about how this was going to turn out? Why would Gavin Newsom be going out of his way, as he did today, to trash Ron DeSantis? That doesn't pass the doesn't get that theory out of the batter's box that DeSantis has done. I am as pessimistic as anybody. I believe Trump will be the nominee, but I don't believe that it's a done deal, and especially when you have probably multiple indictments still coming down Trump's path. I will be the first to acknowledge, though, that the most likely scenario, although it's not likely at all, to be clear, that would prevent Trump from being the nominee, it has to do with his health. If he were to have a major health issue, then I think that would probably be more damaging than the indictments. The idea that the indictments in the short run have greatly helped him is incredibly depressing, but not surprising. And by the way, I'm very much against the indictment in New York. I think it's garbage. Yeah. It's garbage from a legal perspective. What I don't know is, did they do this thinking that they were going to take Trump out, or did they do this in some sort of Machiavellian chess-like maneuver where they thought they would help him be the nominee because they know he's beatable? Let me, as a pessimist, let me give you the optimistic view of what could happen here, and that might not turn out that well for Trump. Number one, this could have been a lot worse if the indictment had come later, right? Can you imagine if the indictment had come after DeSantis had already announced, right? So DeSantis has his, or maybe right as he announced, that would be really terrible. DeSantis gets sapped of all momentum of the announcement, and there's this rushing around Trump effect. That timing would be much, much worse. This is going to fade, I believe, this rally around the flag effect. Trump also, while he has raised several $1 million, whatever it is, because of the indictment, this is not money that can be duplicated. This is going into this is taking money out of a well that was already drying up. So he's going to the small donors who are now energized. Oh my God, we got to rush his defense. Well, how does he duplicate that in the future? right? What does he possibly do in the future to be able to generate the energy to get him even whatever it was, $7 million, $10 million, whatever? I've heard different numbers in light of this indictment, which, by the way, are not big numbers. I mean, DeSantis' super PAC just announced that they raised $30 million in the same time period. You know why? Because they're going to 30 guys with $1 million, which is and by the way, those guys have a lot more money left. So DeSantis' well is nowhere near dry, especially if he is able to maintain a strong second place in the polling. Trump, who's a fake billionaire and has no cash and wouldn't be willing to spend his own cash if he wanted to, if he had it, is going to have a tough time with money. Now, that doesn't mean he can't win. I'm just saying that there are things that are going to happen that are not great for Trump. And, and while as terrible as the polling has been for people like myself since the indictment, frankly, some of them could have been a lot worse. I mean, and in the state polling, a lot of the state polling is still not that great for Trump when you consider, every single Republican voter has voted for him for president at least once or twice in the last 8 years. And, for him to be below 50% in many of the state polls is pretty pathetic, frankly. And so, look, I fully acknowledge this has not been a good couple of weeks. That things are bad. If you don't want Trump to be, if you want, like me, you don't want Trump to be the nominee. You desperately don't want Trump to be the nominee because you're positive he'll lose to Biden, barring a black swan event. And you think DeSantis would probably beat him. But the other part of this is, here's where the indictment will hurt him. I was very concerned, meaning Trump. I was very concerned that the polling differences between how Trump does against Biden and how DeSantis does against Biden were not going to be pronounced enough for it to be a clear message to the movable Republican voter. Post-indictment, I think that number is going to be pretty easily discernible. I think that Trump has lost so many people that were in the undecided or maybe category that will now never vote for him. I mean, ABC had a poll out today. His approval rating nationwide is 25%.
Yeah.
25%.
His only hope is that he goes against Hillary again, who was the other most hated person, right? I mean, that doesn't make sense. I think about you're going, why did this happen? And you're roughly your age, so I remember Clinton and trying to get him out of office. The impeachment, even then you go, well, what's the point, right? I get why this is happening, but the mentality of the Republicans really then was, you get rid of him, problem solved. No, there's always another thing. So I don't think that this DA has much foresight other than this is boogeyman bad and we're going after him. What do you think of that? But then I want to play you a clip here because I don't know if Charlie Kirk is. Anyway, let me just play you this. Make sure you can hear this.
Do I really have to watch this?
It's going to be very quick. I dislike him very much, by the way. But this is the kind of stuff you get. So,
I think this is a good thing in the sense that I think Trump will be more useful for the country as a martyr than as a nominee. And I think this is hopefully making a lot of conservatives realize who they're up against. That the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party establishment aren't playing games. They're playing for keeps. And hopefully this will put some spine in the backs of some Republicans and Republican operatives.
So he will be the nominee, though. So what do you mean by that?
What I mean, first of all, I don't know that that's the case. We don't know that for certain. But
almost 100%. I could tell you his support's going to go up by 20 points. But sure,
but we don't know what. Yeah. Hold on.
Okay, so that's there's more to it that it's cringe out there. But what do you think of that? That it's such a done deal that it's just going to go up by 20%. There's a ceiling of what he can get. I think that you just kind of described that. If there's the hatred out there, there's even that within the Republican Party. So there's a ceiling of the maximum he can do, and you can only squeeze so much to get him all that support. And then you've got a general election. So what do you think of that kind of? And is it negligent for him and his viewers to be telling them that kind of stuff?
Well, this is Charlie Kirk. This is a guy who was basically part of Kari Lake's campaign for governor in Alaska, who guaranteed, Charlie Kirk did, numerous times, guaranteed after the votes were already cast that Kerry Lake would be the next governor of Arizona. How did that turn out? He couldn't even tell you who the winner was after the votes were cast. So I'm really not that concerned with Charlie Kirk's quote-unquote prediction because he's wearing a MAGA hat and he's doing it to please his audience. He's basically jerking his audience off. And that's basically what that is. Now, again, I will be the first. I can make a far stronger argument right now that Trump is going to be the nominee than I can that DeSantis is going to be the nominee. I'm the first to acknowledge that. But it's not a done deal yet. And really, what it comes down to is this. There's really, if you told me one number, I could tell you exactly how this would turn out. If you could tell me right now, what is the percentage of the Republican voting populace in a primary or caucus that will vote for Trump no matter what? If you could tell me what that number is, I could tell you exactly how this all goes down. And the key is that number over 40% or is it under 40%? If it is over 40%, then there's nothing that can be done. Then Trump will be the nominee. It's just a matter of how long it will take and how it's all going to flesh out and whether DeSantis remains viable in the future. There's still important things to decide at that point. But Trump will be the nominee if he has that number is over 40%. If that number is under 40% and the number of candidates stays manageable, which unfortunately is an if at this point,
right?
But if it stays manageable, then I believe DeSantis will be the nominee. Now, will that nomination matter? because at that point, Trump probably takes his ball and goes home and makes sure that DeSantis loses. And so it might be a nomination that is worthless.
That's a good point there, by the way, that, how much control do you think he has with the Republican Party right now?
Trump?
Yes.
And when you say the Republican Party, you mean
let's split that into two. Let's say there's the GOP establishment, whatever that operates the election, or not the elections, but the debates and all that stuff, and then the McCarthy in Congress. There's two kind of sites that I think he's more involved with the actual structural part than the actual McCarthy.
Well, all these people have been Trump people at some point. I mean, so he still has a significant amount of control. It won't surprise me. Look, I've already made the prediction that Vivek Ramaswamy is going to get into the debates of the Indian businessman, and that Trump wants him in the debates because Vivek is going to be effectively Trump's hitman. I really do believe that Vivek will be used not as somebody who cares about the nomination, but he will go after DeSantis. He will trip DeSantis up. If DeSantis looks like he's going to go in for the kill on an attack against Trump, Vivek will jump in front of the sword or the bullet or dive on the hand grenade. That's what, and the decision on whether or not Vivek gets in is going to be subjective. And I don't think it's going to be a surprise when Vivek gets in because of the decision of people who are loyal to Donald Trump.
And you always see the spoiler that gets in there in the debates where they start to understand I'm not going to do anything. So who's going to win? Now I position myself so I look strong, kind of take out their opponent, as what you're saying. So maybe Vivek is looking to be like a VP in doing this.
He's not going to be the VP, but he could either get a conservative media job or a position in the Trump administration. By the way, Nikki Haley is going to be a human barometer in this. I mean, Nikki Haley thinks that she's going to be vice president. So if she starts attacking DeSantis very significantly, then that she is convinced that Trump is going to be the nominee and she's trying to impress Trump and by ingratiating herself to him. Look, DeSantis has so many things against him, one of which is everybody is incentivized. The liberal media, the Lincoln Project, the MAGA media, the other candidates in the race. Everybody is incentivized to go after Ron DeSantis. And bizarrely, almost nobody is incentivized to go after Donald Trump other than the Manhattan DA, apparently, which also helps Donald Trump. So,
I'll give you one question here. My buddy Andy says, ask him about you, about the Tennessee 3. He said a couple things that left me perplexed. And I'm sure you understand what the Tennessee 3 are.
But I don't know the things that made him perplexed.
No,
as far as the Tennessee 3 is concerned, I'll be the first to acknowledge I didn't do a deep dive on it. I think it's really bad optics that the 2 black guys got expelled and the white woman did not. That I don't know how, that gave the media a gift right there.
Right.
I mean, it just handed them a gift because that's all that matters in today's world. The facts do not matter; they're irrelevant. And the optics of 2 black men in Tennessee, a Confederate state, being expelled from their elected positions, while the white woman doesn't get expelled. That's just unfortunately that's a gift to the media, in my view. Now, whether they deserved it or not, look, I don't even know what the rules are anymore. I mean, I'm so confused as to what are the rules here. So, I mean, if they deserved it, I'm all for them getting expelled. But I just didn't understand how they could be so stupid as to do that to 2 black guys and leave a white woman.
I actually watched the whole on the floor, and they were going back and forth, and they had them present their evidence and against them and for them. The thing is, the 2 black guys were yelling. They had a bullhorn. She was standing next to him. Now she had a bullhorn later. They thought she had brought it in. She didn't. So when I'm watching,
I understand. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Looking at the optics, yes, I get it. I think they said, hey, some of them said, you know what, she doesn't deserve it. So a few voted down, and she made it by like a vote or 2. You're right. The optics of that did not look good. So anyway, and maybe that'll cure Andy's thing. How do you feel about in general? I get the feeling that Tennessee, their house there, that they said, you know what? You guys made a big deal about the decorum on January 6th. Maybe it's much worse. So you know what? We're going to play this game too. And we're just going to kick you out. And what do you think about where, houses of different states and DAs start going after everybody? So maybe you get to a point where you have mutually assured destruction, where we all maybe step back from this. Is that a possibility?
I agree with your first point. As far as the second point, look, I think we're headed for civil war. Or maybe not even civil war. We may just be headed for a breakup. I mean, where each state now is just going to fight for their own thing. I get the January 6th metaphor. There are a lot on the right who rushed to the defense of the Republicans in Tennessee, saying, well, look, we're just punishing an insurrection, right? I mean, that was the narrative. And I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. And but I am one of those that has believed for a long, especially since COVID, I believe that we will break up as a nation. And, I've said that we will break up. It's kind of ironic that the football conferences have now become so convoluted that even they don't have, geographic lines anymore.
Right.
Where USC and UCLA are going to be playing in the Big Ten, and Oklahoma and Texas are in the SEC. But if you take the college football lines, the conference lines from a couple of years ago, that's a pretty good indicator of where we're headed as far as the national split up. And that's probably, 4 or 5 different countries. Maybe it'll be less than that, but we really aren't one nation anymore. We aren't.
So what conference do you want to be in when you go out there and in your mind, you're like, this is going to split up. Where's the best place I can play golf? Sky West, the old Pac-10, SEC. Where are you going to end up, John? And then we'll head out.
Well, I'm a definite SEC guy in the national breakup, not just from a golf perspective, but from, I'll take my President DeSantis of the new Southeastern Conference. That's a hell of a nation right there. If we can convince Virginia to join us, I think which is possible, be close. It'd be a close vote in Virginia. And Georgia, I think, would be dragged along simply by geography. But I think that's a pretty good country, at least culturally. Well, not perfect, but I certainly don't want to be in the new Big Ten with USC and UCLA here in my backyard in Los Angeles. joining, because that's going to bring in all sorts of problems. So I'm trying to be as humorous about this as possible, but I really do think that's where we don't have anything in common anymore, and it's only going to get worse. And the media is a huge part of that. When I talk about this on my podcast, The Death of Journalism, all the time, where the media divides us on purpose, and the fragmentation in the media exacerbates all of our differences and all the things that divide us. Television used to be the greatest uniting force in the modern history of the country. Now it's the greatest divisive force, and we just have totally. We're not even on the same. Forget about the same page. We're not even in the same book anymore. I mean, Gavin Newsom can shut down California for 2 years and go to red states talking about freedom and how much he cares about kids and how terrible red state governors are because they're totalitarians and tyrants. I'm like, what world are we talking about here? We've got Dylan Mulvaney doing ads for major products like Bud Light and Nike and Tampax. And he's like, dude, pretending to be a girl. I mean, this is not the kind of stuff that one nation can survive when huge portions of that nation don't just disagree with it. They think that that's absolutely fucking crazy. And that's where we're headed. And I don't know how long it's going to take and what's going to be the spark. By the way, you know how close we came to a civil war in 2020? If Donald Trump, think about this, if Donald Trump had gotten 44,000 more votes in Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin, that's all it would have taken. Or, if he had flipped 22,000 votes in those 3 states. Now, that's a very doable thing, right? If that had happened, the Electoral College vote would have been, assuming no faithless electors, 269 to 269. This country would not have survived that. Period. There would have been no chance of this country surviving that. There would have been blood at some point in that process of figuring that out. And that's how close we came. And, thankfully, the Electoral College map has shifted because of the census. So that scenario can't be duplicated in 2024. But something is going to facilitate it. And it's not going to be pretty.
People, this is why we bring John on. He knows everything about something. And I think JC it's John zigs when everyone else zags. I think that could be your new tagline. Perfectly inappropriate. John, The Death of Journalism, you and Liz Abib, I think you're co-hosts. Is that still going on? I'm a few episodes behind, but it's still my podcast.
You are a lot of episodes behind. Liz is not doing the podcast with me anymore because she has a full-time job and living in 3 different states, and logistically it was just very difficult to make it work. But I may add another co-host in the short time period. I don't know that yet, but I've been doing it solo, and we do it twice a week. We release on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's a take on the news media you will not get anywhere else.
Yes, I do. And if you like crime podcast, go watch your with the benefit of hindsight, the Joe Paterno story. It's fantastic, and everyone should go see that. John, once again, I appreciate you being here. I'm gonna bother you every few months to come on, give us an update of how things are going. Probably the next golf thing, and I didn't even get into the women's basketball stuff. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back. Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. And I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast, I can't find it anywhere, and they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke, yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me,
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger. I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer.
But anyways,
boomer.